I was inspired by a recent trip that I made to Ohio, and I love the country charm that they had. So today I wanted to try out some country Christmas DIYs using up more of those fun fabric scraps that we all have. Hey, it's Donna. I'm happy to have you here today. This is some green striped fabric that I had left over from a project last year, and it was coffee dyed. I also have this piece of cardstock, and I'm just drawing out a basic gingerbread man shape. Now I have to tell you, I am not very good at drawing, but I didn't want to print out a template. I wanted to attempt to try my own. So if you want to print out a template, you definitely could. I'm now going to just cut this out with my scissors, and then I should have at this point marked off which was the front and the back, because since my piece is not symmetrical, it will make a difference in our end result. I'm laying out my fabric here, and I wanted the stripes to go up and down. I am working on a nice flat surface. My craft table is not a nice flat surface. It's got a lot of texture to it, so I just have this board. Now I'm going to place my template onto the fabric, and I'm going to take a pencil and just trace around it. You can see how well the pencil transferred onto the fabric. Now again, I'm going to be using my scissors and cutting it out. I actually wish that I had cut it out just a little bit bigger, so I decided that I am going to just go out about 1/2 centimeter from the pencil line. That way here, it'll be nice and big for me to stitch together. So at this point, this is where I'm like, okay, I need to mark my front and my back because I laid out my fabric, and I needed to flip my piece over so then my pieces would match up properly. Again, because I traced this or drew this out myself, my image was not perfect. It was not symmetrical all the way around. So I needed to flip my template over so I would get the opposite direction on my fabric, and now I can cut it out. I'll be matching my pieces together, and you'll see how well that worked. I hope that makes sense. Here I'm going to just show you, I'm laying my pieces together, wrong side to wrong side, so that the good sides or the striped sides are facing out. I'm using this embroidery thread that I have. It's a nice matte finish to it. Doesn't have like a high sheen. I'm adding a touch of glue to the end to stiffen it up. That was a suggestion from a viewer, so I want to thank that person very much for that tip. It works very well to thread a needle. So I am going to do a knot on the one end, and now I'm going to just do a basic running stitch all the way around the edge. I am going to stitch along that pencil line best I can because I do want a little bit of an edge to my piece here, because I want to be able to fray it a little bit. So again, I'm just doing a basic running stitch all the way around the edge. So I am going to be just creating this so you can use this anywhere, but if you want to add a little hanger so you can turn this into an ornament, I would suggest that you stitch that hanger into place from the top, and then that way here you've got a nice hanger. You could use some ribbon or some string. Here I have some fill, and I'm just going to add that in. I'm going to use a pencil to help put it into place down in the feet. As you can see, I didn't fully stitch it up. I do have a bit of an opening there for me to fit my fingers and the pencil in there, so I can fill this little guy up with some fiberfill. So I'm going to stitch this up a little bit more. I didn't want the fiber fill to fall out of the head portion of our little guy here. So I thought if I closed it up just a little bit more, it would stay in place as needed. If you want, you could add some scent into this so it smells like cinnamon. I thought that would be a really nice touch. I just decided not to do that part. I just wanted to fill this guy up and then use it for decoration within my home. Once you have this guy all filled with the fiber fill, you can then stitch it close. So I'm just going to close that off with a basic running stitch. And then when I get to the end, I am going to be tying my two ends together with a basic knot. You can see it ended up working really well. I have got just enough stitches that are all pretty much equally spaced around, and it ended up tying off in the back really nicely. So now I'm just going to kind of take my fingernails and just rough up the edge of this piece. Again, we're going for that rustic country look. I really like that primitive style. I think it's just such a beautiful, cozy, warm style for the upcoming season. I'm going to decorate this little guy now. I've got this coffee dyed black and white checkered gingham, and I'm just going to make a simple little bow. I thought he would be cute wearing a little bow around the neck. You can make like a little scarf as well if you like. I'm just going to trim the ends here, and then I'm going to glue it into place. I'm just fiddling around with it until I got the right size so it doesn't look too bulky and out of place. I also have these cute little buttons. I just laying those out into place, and now I'm going to put just some hot glue on the back and glue everything into place. You could stitch some eyes or glue some buttons down for eyes as well. I decided not to bother. I kind of like the simplicity of how this little guy looks. Such a fun little gingerbread man, and he is ready to be put on display, or you can even put it in a Christmas tree. I thought that would be a fun touch as well. So I have a bigger piece of this scrap here of this black and white gingham check. Again, this is coffee dyed as well. I like the coffee dyed. I find it just gives a really rustic finish to the fabrics and makes for a really warm and cozy effect, especially if you like that primitive style. I just tearing some strips, and then I also have this beautiful coffee dyed cheesecloth that I had in my stash as well. Again, it was left over from a previous project. I didn't realize that it was 2-ply there, so I was just checking that and unfolded it. I'm like, oh, okay, it is. So now I'm gonna cut it into strips. And as I was doing this, I'm like, wait a second, why am I doing it this way? This is like the long version. So I decided to fold it up and then cut it down. Now, originally I cut all these pieces for another project, but then I decided to skip that project, and I grabbed some of these wires instead and some pipe cleaners, and I decided I wanted to create some fabric candy canes. So I just have this thick, heavy wired gauge, and then these pipe cleaners. I'm using the pipe cleaners just to give some thickness to this wire without creating too much heaviness. Now you could use those plastic candy cane ornaments as well. I have done that before and it works really, really well, but I was all out of those. So I thought, well, let's try it this way, creating our own candy cane with some stuff that we already have on hand. I did use a little bit of hot glue just to help adhere the chenille or the pipe cleaners to the wire. All right, so now for the fabric, I sandwiched a piece of some cheesecloth between the gingham, 2 strips of gingham. I'm going to twist it. Next, you're going to start on one end and kind of wrap the fabric around the end, and you'll want to glue it into place. Then you want to start to wrap the fabric around the wire or the plastic candy cane ornament that you have on hand. So as I had mentioned, I had gone on a trip to Ohio to visit my aunt with my mom, and we had so much fun, and we went to a craft mall, and I noticed that this primitive country look was very popular in the area, which I thought was awesome because I love that look. It is such a warm and cozy look, especially for the Christmas season. It was such a beautiful area to visit. So those of you who live there, I have to say it is definitely a gorgeous area. All right, so I had glued the fabric onto our wire piece. Now I am going to decorate the candy cane. You could just leave it as is, but I decided to add just a few little embellishments. I had made a simple jute twine bow, and now I've got some flocked greenery that I had picked up. This is a stem from Michael's. I believe I got it for a couple years ago. I'm just going to glue a few of those little pieces into place. Of course, you can use anything you'd like. I am now going to add my little jute twine bow, and I'm going to now add some pip berries, which I find is a beautiful added touch to that primitive country Christmas look. And then you can just use this any way you'd like, in a bowl or in your tree. I have always loved these antique bells, but I have never been able to find them here where I live. So when I was in Ohio, I saw them at a store called Lehman's, which is located in Amish country. I just had to grab some, and I thought, well, these are nice and small. They'll fit my suitcase. So they came home with me because I knew I wanted to create something fun for the upcoming Christmas season. I decided to remove the rope. You can see I've got 3 of them. Now I've got this leftover strips from a previous project. I have this blue and white ticking fabric that was left over from a project as well. I needed a few more strips, so I decided to rip some more. They're approximately 2 centimeters wide. I'm just going to, again, just tear these down. I like the frayed edge that creates when you tear your fabric. Here's that ticking fabric. Believe it or not, this is actually from an old pillowcase. I had used the filling for another project, and I loved the way the fabric looked, and I have to say it took the coffee dye really well. If you're at all interested in seeing how to dye your own fabrics, I will have a video for you linked down in the video description below. So now I've got some strips all ready to go. I also had some other coffee dyed fabrics here. It was just a natural cotton. I'm going to do 1 of each, so I have a total of 3 strands, tying it off with a knot at the top. I'm placing that knot in a clipboard, and now I'm going to start to braid this. Now, if you have another idea on how to braid, then please leave that down in the comments section. You can see here, like, the clipboard works really well, but it was moving around on my craft table quite a bit, so I was kind of struggling with that a little bit. I could have hammered the board into place on my table, but I didn't want to damage my table. I've got my braid long enough. Now I trimmed off the excess fabric, and the one end I'm stringing through the loop of my bell. And then I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to add just a little bit of hot glue at the back side of my braid, lift the fabric tabs up and press it all into place. Add a little bit more glue if you need to help secure those fabric pieces into place so it doesn't come apart. We will be adding a little bit more here. I'm adding some jute twine, and I'm going to wrap that around, and that will help to secure all of that together as well. Plus add another added extra little country charm. I just added a little hot glue, and now I'm just going to wrap the twine around to hide that little bit of loose fabric that was showing. Of course, add more glue as needed. Continue to wrap until you're happy with how it looks. I just cut off the end. Again, add a little bit of hot glue and press that into place. And that is it. It worked really well on holding that all together. So I've done that for all 3 of my bells. You can see how that looks, and my braids are all at different lengths. Now at this point, I should have made a loop and glued that into the middle of all 3 of my braided strands, but I didn't. I wanted to create a hanger, and instead I went and just looped all my pieces together and then tried to create a hanger here, but I kind of struggled a bit. So I really should have from the start created a loop, glued it into the middle, got rid of those knots. I needed to do that as well. But hey, gotta learn from our mistakes. Sometimes this stuff is just trial and error on my part. And then as you go along, you discover, oh yeah, I should not have done it that way. So I'm gonna share my mistake with you so that you don't make that same mistake. Or perhaps maybe you've got a suggestion on how to do that. I decided to add a little decorative element on these as well. So I'm using that same greenery as before, and I'm just decorating the tops of the bells like you see me doing here. Of course, you can decorate this any way you like. Another thought I had was to attach the tops of our braided fabric to a brass hoop in one way. I thought that might be a fun touch, but I didn't have the appropriate brass hoop to go with this particular project. So I'm coming back to the top of my little hanger here, and this is where I decided to add some glue just to help to secure it all together. And now I'm going to be cutting off those knots because those knots just were bugging me. It didn't look right. So that's why I say I should have done this a little differently, but hey, it ended up working out just fine in the end. I will have to use a bit more jute twine to cover up the top of this. So just like I did at the top of the bell, I'm going to glue the one end of jute to the top, wrap it around, and that will help to secure all of that together and hide the rough edges of that fabric as well. I had already wrapped a bit of twine around the top as you had seen before. Again, same way as I'm doing right here, but because I removed the knots of the fabric, I ended up having to just cover it up a little bit more just to make it look more finished. So I could have left this as is, but I wanted to add just a little bit more decorative element. So I'm just going to create simple little bows out of my jute twine, and then I will make a total of 3 of those, and I'm going to just place that at the top of the bells. Once you add a little bit of glue to the knot of the bow, it does hold together really nicely. So I'm going to do that again for all 3 of those little bells, create 3 bows, and now I'm adding some pipberry. I got my pipberry actually from Dollar Tree. I'm not sure where else you can pick it up. If you know, please let me know down in the comments section. It'll help others out as well. I really like the red color. You could have definitely gone with some little bells as well or other little berries, but I like this, just this little touch of red. It just helps to make it look so festive. So you can hang this on the wall, on a tree. I just love how these little guys turned out. I have this little jam jar left from canning, and I had distressed and rusted this canning lid. I've got a video on how to do that for you listed down in the description box below. I had coffee dyed this scrap piece of some eyelet lace. I really love eyelet lace. It's so pretty. I'm using this tape roll and just tracing around it with a pencil. It's a little bit bigger than my canning lid. I'm going to use my scissors and just cut that out. I wish I actually would have used some pinking shears for this. I think that would have been a really nice added touch to the edge, but I didn't think of this until after the fact. Gonna set that other scrap aside. So you can see that this fabric fits over my jar really nicely, and I'm just gonna make sure it fits underneath my lid well, and I like how that looks. You can just pull it tight as needed and just making sure it's all fitting together, and it does. So this is something I've never seen here in Canada in the area where I live. I picked it up from the craft mall that we had visited. I had to seal it up really well because it's heavily scented and there is also an oil. So what it is this beautiful potpourri. And like I said, I hadn't seen anything specifically like this. So it does come with an oil refresher, but it has some really pretty wax scent pieces in it. And it looks like some like fruit, like little berries and little apple slices. And I had never seen anything like this before. So I really like that. I thought it would be fun for the Christmas season. So I thought, this has got to come home with me. So I was excited to bring that. So, and it fit in my suitcase really well. I'm filling up my jar with the little pieces, and there was a nice little window in the front of the jar, so I wanted to make sure that little piece of apple was showing there and some of the berries, and there was other things like some rose hips in there. So I just filled up this little jar with that, and now I am going to take my little piece of fabric, place it on the top of the jar and close it up with the canning lid ring. And you can see how it all has a really fun, beautiful, primitive country look to it. And the potpourri totally reminds me of one of those old-fashioned country farmhouse homes. The smell and aroma of pumpkin pie baking, I just thought it was just such a fun little easy to do project. I'm going to decorate it using some baker's twine. I'm just going to wrap it around the lid, and then I am going to just tie a simple basic bow using the baker's twine. And one thing I like to do with my baker's twine is to tie off a knot on each end. It'll help to prevent this from fraying any further. So I just basic little knot on the end, and then you can cut off any of the excess as needed. Now I'm going to add some greenery again, this flock greenery that I had. I've got a big bundle of it. It was pretty inexpensive. I picked it up on clearance. One thing I like to do is to pick up some different greenery throughout the year that I can use any time of the year. It doesn't have to be specifically Christmas or spring. So you can see how that's looking so far. I'm going to add a little bit more, and I'm also going to be adding some pip berries and some really, really cute little bells that I had aged using my rust technique. You can see how rusted those are. These had been done several years ago, so they aged beautifully. One thing I will say, if you don't want them to continue aging, then you'll definitely have to spray them with a matte sealer. So I'll just glue the bells and the berries into place, and then you can put it on display anywhere in your home for the Christmas season. I will just let you know that I do have a project planned on how to use that scented oil that I had purchased to go with this potpourri as well. So definitely stay tuned for that upcoming video as well. Hey, I'm curious, what type of primitive projects have you made for your holiday season? Let me know down below. I have this battery operated candle in my stash. I sprayed it with this frosted glass spray, and you can see how it frosted up the bulb nicely. I'm going to be using this potting soil archival ink, which is a permanent ink. I'm using it on the bulb. I wanted to create a very rustic aged look to the light bulb. So I thought between adding the frosted spray and using this permanent ink would really help to create that effect. It creates that really, that kind of grungy old look that old light bulbs could have in an old cabin or old farmhouse. I really thought that this would be a unique way to create that look. So I added 2 coats of the ink to the light bulb, and I allowed it to dry well in between each coat. Next, I decided to add the archival ink to the actual candlestick and the little screw top you see me doing here. I thought I should do that just in case any of it showed through our next step. I wasn't sure if it would or not, so I thought if I could just tone down the white, it would help to camouflage that a little better. So I'm allowing that ink to dry, and then it'll be permanent. Here I've got my favorite primitive farmhouse style fabric that I had coffee dyed. I like the cute little flowers that it has and the colors. I'm just cutting down some strips here, and now I'm going to start to apply some glue to my candlestick and wrap the candlestick with our fabric. Now, one thing, you'll want to make sure that you do not get any glue on the screw top. You need to be able to remove that screw top so you can add your batteries as well as remove the light bulb and replace it as needed. So again, I'm just using a little bit of hot glue and adding the fabric, and then you'll want to start to wrap it around. You can see that the frayed edges of the fabric really add to this piece. Now, because I am using a scrap piece material, I'm having to do this in sections, but maybe you're using a full piece of fabric and you won't have to do this in sections as I have done. I needed to remove the base of my little candlestick, so I'm just snipping that off. You may not need to do that for your candlestick. I'm removing the extra fabric here, and then I'm going to glue that on. here, you can see me doing that. And now I'm going to add a base to my candle. So I wasn't sure how I was going to do this. I am using some hot glue and I'm going to attach it to the smaller wood slice here. And then I'll show you what it looks like with the larger wood slice, just to give you an idea if that's something that you want to do. I decided just to stick with the smaller wood slice. To add another decorative little touch, I'm adding just a simple bow with some extra fabric at the base of this. And then at this point, again, you can just decorate it any way you'd like. I am going to just kind of keep everything somewhat unified. So I'm using the same greenery as well as some pip berries and the little bells that I had rusted as well. Another nice little touch would be some cute little pine cones. I thought that would be really neat too. So once you have all your little embellishments put into place, don't forget the battery. So I'm going to show you how to access that. Just removing the light bulb, and then at the top, I'm just rolling the fabric down, and then I can just unscrew that top little bit there, and then you can put your batteries into place. Mine does take AA batteries. I ended up putting them in wrong, so I had to go back in and flip them around and put them in properly. But you can see here, you just need to put your light bulb back into place, and then that's it. You're ready to put this on display. I would absolutely love to know which project was your favorite. I want to thank you so much for joining me. Check out more inspiration in this video to the right, and we'll see you in the next one. Take care. Bye.